Greetings, fellow history enthusiasts. Today, we're embarking on a captivating journey into the past, where kings, knights, and an extraordinary document shaped the destiny of a nation. The Magna Carta, which was issued in 1215, is a historic document that holds a prominent place in the development of constitutional law and the protection of individual rights. It was a pivotal moment in the history of England and, by extension, the evolution of modern democratic principles. The Magna Carta, which translates to Great Charter in Latin, was not a revolutionary declaration of rights in the modern sense. Instead, it was a product of its time, reflecting the power struggles between King John of England and his barons. In the early 13th century, King John faced significant opposition from his barons due to his heavy taxation, arbitrary rule, and his disputes with the church. In response to their demands, King John agreed to meet with his barons at Runnymede, a meadow near London, in June 1215. At Runnymede, the king and his barons negotiated and ultimately agreed upon the Magna Carta, a written charter that outlined certain principles and restrictions on royal authority. It sought to address various grievances and concerns of the barons, including issues related to taxation, the administration of justice, and limits on the king's power. Notably, the Magna Carta established the principle that the king was subject to the law, just like his subjects, and that his authority had limitations. The provision regarding the protection of church rights in the Magna Carta is a significant aspect of this historic document. In the context of the early 13th century, the church wielded immense influence in England, both as a religious institution and as a powerful political entity with extensive landholdings and wealth. Understanding this context is essential to grasp the importance of this provision. The Magna Carta, in point 1, explicitly acknowledges and safeguards the freedom and autonomy of the English Church. It states that the Church shall be free and that it shall have its rights entire and its liberties inviolate. This declaration carried profound implications for the time. Freedom of the Church. The Magna Carta emphasized that the English Church should enjoy independence from royal interference. This meant that the church had the authority to govern its own affairs, including the appointment of clergy and bishops, without the king's intervention. Rights entire. This phrase underscored the notion that the church's rights and privileges would remain untouched and unaltered by the monarchy. The king could not arbitrarily revoke or diminish these rights. Liberties inviolate. The Magna Carta guaranteed that the liberties of the church would be protected and not violated by the king's actions. It aimed to prevent the king from confiscating church property or meddling in church affairs. This provision held several important implications. It recognized the pivotal role of the church in medieval English society and acknowledged its distinct sphere of influence. It reflected the influence of the church in the negotiations at Runnymede. As many barons who opposed King John had close ties to the church, it established a precedent that institutions and organizations, including the church, should have the autonomy to self-govern without undue interference from the monarchy. While this provision was essential for its time, it should be viewed in the broader context of the struggle for limitations on royal authority and the protection of individual and institutional rights. Over the centuries, the relationship between the church and the English monarchy evolved significantly, leading to changes such as the English Reformation in the 16th century, which had a profound impact on the church's status and role in England. In the Magna Carta, specifically in point 1, the phrase rights entire holds significant importance in the context of the 13th century. This provision emphasized that the English Church, a powerful institution at the time, should enjoy its rights entire without interference from the monarchy. What does rights entire mean in this context? Unimpaired rights. Rights entire implies that the Church's rights and privileges were to be preserved in their complete and unaltered form. The intention was to protect the church from arbitrary encroachments by the king, ensuring that its established rights remained intact. Autonomy and independence. This phrase reinforced the idea that the church had the authority to govern its own internal affairs independently, including matters like the appointment of clergy and bishops. The king was not permitted to interfere with these aspects of church governance. Legal security. By guaranteeing rights entire, the Magna Carta aimed to provide the church with a legal foundation and security against any attempts by the monarchy to diminish or infringe upon its established rights and privileges. This concept was not only about protecting the church's interests but also about establishing a broader principle that institutions and entities within society should have the freedom to operate without arbitrary interference from the ruling authority. It contributed to the development of the idea that the king himself was subject to the law and could not arbitrarily infringe upon the established rights of others. In the context of the Magna Carta and its historical significance, the notion of rights entire played a pivotal role in shaping the relationship between the church and the monarchy, as well as in establishing the broader principles of limited government and the protection of individual and institutional rights. Habeas corpus, a Latin phrase meaning "you shall have the body," is a fundamental legal principle that ensures an individual's right to challenge their unlawful detention or imprisonment. This concept has deep historical roots, with one of its earliest expressions found in the Magna Carta of 1215. In the Magna Carta, specifically in Clause 36, there is an early precursor to the idea of habeas corpus. It states, "We will not deny or defer to any man either justice or right." While not as explicit as later habeas corpus statutes, this clause laid the foundation for the concept by emphasizing that no free man could be arrested, imprisoned, or deprived of property without a fair and lawful trial. Over time, this principle evolved, and the concept of habeas corpus became more explicit in subsequent legal developments. The fundamental idea behind habeas corpus is that it serves as a legal remedy to prevent arbitrary detention or imprisonment. When a person is detained, they or someone acting on their behalf can petition the court to issue a writ of habeas corpus. This writ compels the detaining authority to bring the detained individual before the court and justify the legality of their detention. Habeas corpus has several important functions and implications. Protection of individual liberties. Habeas corpus serves as a safeguard against unlawful and indefinite detention. It upholds the principle that no one should be deprived of their freedom without just cause and proper legal procedure. Checks on government power. By allowing individuals to challenge their detention in court, habeas corpus acts as a check on government or state authority, preventing abuses of power and ensuring accountability. Presumption of innocence. Habeas corpus underscores the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. It requires the authorities to provide evidence and legal justification for the detention, shifting the burden of proof to the detaining party. Access to justice. It provides a legal avenue for individuals to seek relief and protection against wrongful imprisonment, promoting the rule of law and access to justice. The concept of habeas corpus, rooted in the Magna Carta and further developed through centuries of legal evolution, has become a cornerstone of modern legal systems in many countries. It represents a crucial protection of individual rights and freedoms and remains a vital tool for upholding the rule of law and ensuring that justice prevails even in the face of government authority. The Magna Carta, signed in 1215, contains provisions that established fundamental principles of governance and limited the powers of the English monarchy. One of these important principles, outlined in Clause 12, pertains to the requirement of consent for taxation. This clause stated that the king could not impose new taxes on his subjects without their consent, specifically the consent of his barons. The clause reads, "No scutage or aid shall be imposed on our kingdom unless by common council of our kingdom, except for ransoming our person, for making our eldest son a knight, and for once marrying our eldest daughter, and for these there shall not be levied more than a reasonable aid." Here's what this provision meant in practice: taxation with representation. Clause 12 underscored the principle that taxation should have the consent of those being taxed. In this case, it required the common council of the kingdom, which essentially meant the king needed the agreement of his barons or council before imposing new taxes. This was an early precursor to the concept of no taxation without representation. Limited taxation purposes. The clause specified certain limited purposes for which the king could impose taxes without seeking consent. These included ransoming the king, knighting his eldest son, and marrying off his eldest daughter. For all other taxation needs, the king required the consent of his barons. This provision was significant for several reasons. It represented a check on the king's power to levy taxes arbitrarily and ensured that taxation was subject to oversight and approval by the realm's governing bodies. It marked an early step toward the development of parliamentary consent for taxation, a principle that would evolve over time and become a key element of constitutional governance in England. It contributed to the broader concept that governance should involve the participation and consent of those being governed, setting a precedent for the development of representative institutions. Over the centuries, the idea of consent for taxation evolved and played a crucial role in the development of parliamentary democracy in England, leading to documents like the English Bill of Rights in 1689 and influencing democratic principles in other parts of the world, including the United States. The Magna Carta's emphasis on limiting taxation without consent laid the groundwork for more representative and accountable forms of government. The Magna Carta, sealed in 1215, marked a pivotal moment in history by addressing the issue of the king's unchecked authority and laying the groundwork for the concept of limited royal power. This principle is evident throughout the document, reflecting the grievances and demands of the barons who sought to reign in the arbitrary rule of King John. At the heart of the Magna Carta's limitation of royal power are several key provisions, with Clause 39 being particularly notable. It states, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned, or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any other way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land." Here's what this provision signifies: rule of law. Clause 39 firmly establishes the principle that even the king himself is subject to the law. It articulates that no free man can be arbitrarily arrested, imprisoned, or deprived of their rights or property without a lawful judgment by their peers or in accordance with established law. Protection of individual rights. This clause places great emphasis on protecting the rights and liberties of free men, ensuring that they cannot be subject to arbitrary actions by the monarchy. It establishes a foundation for individual rights and freedoms, particularly the right to a fair trial, equality before the law. The reference to lawful judgment of his equals underscores the idea of equality before the law, emphasizing that no one, not even the king, is above the principles of justice and fairness. Beyond Clause 39, the Magna Carta contains other provisions that limit royal authority, such as Clause 12, which requires the king to seek consent for taxation, and Clause 61, which establishes a council of barons to hold the king accountable for upholding the Magna Carta's provisions. The Magna Carta's emphasis on the limitation of royal power laid the groundwork for the development of constitutional principles in England and, ultimately, the broader democratic principles that would evolve over the centuries. It marked a significant shift in the balance of power, ensuring that the king's authority was no longer absolute and that the rule of law and individual rights were recognized and protected. The Magna Carta's legacy continues to influence the development of constitutional and legal systems worldwide. While the Magna Carta had immediate practical implications for the relationship between the king and his barons, its broader significance lies in its enduring legacy. Over time, it came to be seen as a symbol of the rule of law and the protection of individual liberties. It was reissued and revised several times in the following decades and became an important precursor to constitutional principles that would develop in England and, later, in other parts of the world, including the United States. In particular, the ideas of limited government, individual rights, and the rule of law embedded in the Magna Carta influenced subsequent documents such as the English Bill of Rights, 1689, and the United States Constitution, 1787. It remains a symbol of the enduring struggle for justice, liberty, and the rule of law, making it one of the most important documents in the history of constitutional and legal development. And there you have it, the remarkable story of the Magna Carta, a document that continues to echo through the corridors of history, reminding us of the enduring quest for justice, liberty, and the rights of all. I hope you found this journey as fascinating as I did. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please consider showing your support. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel by clicking that red subscribe button below. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our historical explorations. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up by hitting the like button. Your feedback means a lot and helps the channel grow. To receive notifications about our future videos, be sure to ring that notification bell. It'll ensure you never miss an episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or historical insights in the comments section below. Share your thoughts on the Magna Carta or suggest future topics you'd like to see covered. Lastly, if you believe in the power of history to educate and inspire, please consider sharing this video with friends, family, or anyone who might find it interesting. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the spirit of history alive.